Battlefront 2 had an incredible journey from its stuttering launch in November of 2017 to now, March 2020. Some major and incredible feats have been achieved in that time, and it feels as if the game has skyrocketed to one of the greats. We've gotten what we wanted, what we hated, and what we never could have expected. It truly has been a roller coaster of a journey, but now as we approach a slow down period of the game, it might be worth taking stock of just how much time has passed and consider the question of when support for this game might end. The game has been supported for a long time now, certainly longer than the previous game, and more than most games. The support throughout has been incredible and fostered a great community and some awesome sub-communities who, I can say with a little confidence, are looking forward to the future with some uncertainty. I can say I'm one of them, and I have some reasons why I think support might end soon.
I know what you're thinking.
It seems like every other week I scroll by to a tweet saying another developer working on Battlefront 2 is leaving their position. Sometimes it's just a position, sometimes it's DICE, and sometimes it's EA altogether. This always feels like a gut punch as you realize someone who helped turn this game around and was part of the reason for the good times in this community can no longer contribute their talents and how it relates to the field ever again. Obviously, promotions and new exciting work opportunities are wonderful and greatly deserved by all who worked on the game. In fact, it's a little exciting as a community knowing that in some small way we helped foster climbing up the career ladder. However, as I mentioned, it seemed like we see more and more people leaving these days with less replacements announced. It could be for nothing. I imagine announcing everyone who stepped in through the doors at DICE to the community isn't on the mind of HR, especially if everything's not quite done and ironed out yet. Downsizing of the team has been a discussion topic within the community ever since the first few months of support, leading to some seriously wild speculation, especially relating to DICE's other titles. People get scared if they think that only a skeleton crew, or what their idea of a skeleton crew, is working on the game. Of course, most don't realize really how long and with how many people it takes to make certain content, but that doesn't stop speculation that less people in the office means less support. I'm a little more agnostic on the situation in particular because I believe the departures were all attached with some good news in terms of future plans for the developers, but I do recognize that maybe a time of less people needed is a time of more people pursuing what they've wanted. At launch, Battlefront 2 was packed with much more content than its predecessor. It was a major selling point that the marketing really seemed to hit on. Battlefront 2015 was slammed for not having a desirable amount of content, and most people felt owed more. The solution, EA of course, proposed was in the form of a season pass. This created the obligation for DICE to follow through on, and not only that, but also an obligation to hit specific dates and themes for these planned content. In Battlefront 2, with the promise of a live service, a much looser obligation was established, but it was promised to be more continuous. As the eras covered in Battlefront 2 were more than just the original trilogy, DICE certainly had much more work to do. The OT was already pretty established in the base game, and the sequels would be released over the time of the live service. So that just left the Clone Wars, and DICE surely delivered on that front. After the revamp of the game, it seemed as if DICE were unstoppable as the months were packed back to back with new Clone Wars releases. They ended that era just as The Rise of Skywalker was hitting theaters to make sure the sequels would get their much needed content, and they managed to deliver that as well, if not on a smaller scale. It was a great success considering during the live service they've added new modes and classes to the game, and as such had an obligation to create sequel-era versions. This only leaves the original trilogy lacking from the game. However, the previous update of this game started meeting those obligations, and the next update promised to contain the final pieces of content to fulfill their obligation to all eras, and thus the entirety of the game. With the next update comes some great content of course, but the loss of any obligation to continue to support the game. The game will be a complete puzzle at that point, and unless they add another row, they'll have no incentive to support it further. The last time we had this much silence on future content coming to the game was around the end of the Last Jedi season. Incredibly frustrating time for all those who can remember, and most likely due to future content having to be delayed or reworked. In terms of the new community era we've been in, the silence is a few weeks or a month away from being the worst we've ever experienced, and is uncharacteristic of DICE, or at least a DICE with definite plans at hand. Now, of course, we found ourselves in an infectiously different time that is having an impact on the entire world's workflow. This is coupled with the fact that positions are being changed around at DICE, and official confirmation of plans for these positions are only likely to have been heard once they have gone through official channels. Also, this might be the first time DICE have met all their targets for content and have some free time to engage in ideas for more, or even just ideas on how to present new content. Also, Ben is only responsible for one more transmission and the replacement has not been announced quite yet, but the job may fall on them to do it instead. The silence is definitely worrying to people, as it has been in the past. Players get easily spooked, but the calm of knowing there's a solid obligation to guarantee more support comforts more veteran players. With this gone, certainty is not with the community right now, and would have some of even the most veteran players worried. The most worrying for me, who has played these games since October of 2015, is the flow of workers who have left the project. I'm not panicking just as yet, as there are tons of reasons why there has been no indication of the future that can be 100% justified. And if there is a time to end support, it is just as we move on to the next gen. I'm sure DICE will continue to do great work in the future, whether it's more support for this game or what might lie beyond.